Hi guys, it's Samar again from Black and Red Real Estate, and welcome to yet another edition of All Things Real Estate. Look, today I'm just going to pick up where we left off in the last episode, where we were talking about the differences between private sale versus auction. Now, I had some fantastic feedback from people, and thank you for sending me those messages. And one of the common things that came out was people wanted to know more about the auction campaign and what it entails as a seller. So I thought I'll do another episode and talk a little bit more about what it is that we do in an auction campaign, what it means for sellers as well as buyers, to help them understand that a little bit further. So here we go. There's three things I'm going to touch off: the process, key terms, and what happens when the property does get sold. So starting off with the process. So look, the campaign itself is quite obviously managed in a timely fashion. Usually it's a 4-week campaign. Some cases we've seen longer campaigns, but usually it's 4 weeks. You have 3 open homes or 3 Saturdays, and then leading on to the 4th Saturday, which is the auction day. There might be private inspections in between those three opens, and in some cases you may even be ready to take an offer before you go to auction, but that's a completely different thing. So 3 open homes, 4th day is a Saturday, or the 4th Saturday is the auction day. Half an hour before the auction day, you have another sort of open house, allowing all those buyers who've come through, or any potential new ones that rock up, to have a look at the house and inspect it for one last time. Also, as part of the auctioneer's duty is to ensure that all the necessary documents are available for public viewing at least half an hour before the auction starts. Now, onto the key terms. So the first one is obviously the reserve price. Now, it's a fascinating term in the sense that as a seller, it's one of the most important things that you need to decide in the campaign or in the whole process. So a reserve price, according to how I look at it, is the absolute minimum, right? The absolute minimum that you're happy to walk away with. Now, I understand that all of us want the absolute best that we can, but you gotta in your mind have that price which is at the lowest point that you still be happy to walk away with, right? Now, it's not a price that you need to decide on day one. It's usually, what I say is, you have to go by what the market feedback is as well. So as an agent, we would give you regular feedback on what people are saying in terms of expectation and the ranges, and based on that, as well as where you sit comfortably, you would set a reserve price, which could be pretty much leading all the way through to auction day, where you would set that price. Now, that's a little bit different from the advertised price. The advertised price is what, as a agent and as a vendor, we want to tell our buyers that this is ideally where the range will be. Now, it factors in obviously comparable market data for similar homes that have sold or are on the market, but it also needs to factor in your reserve price. So it's a bit of a range. Now, according to the new Victorian laws, we do have to stipulate a bit of a range and give them some indication of where it sits. Next, we talk about vendor bids. Now, vendor bid is essentially a bid that you as a vendor and the auctioneer is able to put on your behalf to compete with the last bidder. It's usually put in place where you or the auctioneer is not happy with the last bid, and there's a bit of a gap between that as well as a reserve, and we're trying to push the price up and telling the buyers essentially that we're not selling just yet, we need to see some more improvement in the bidding. On the market, now on the market essentially means where once the price has hit the reserve, or if the auction campaign was to stop, and you might see this when you go to auctions from time to time, that the auctioneer might stop the campaign, go in to consult with the vendors, at which point you as a seller would decide if you are happy to put it on the market, which means you're happy to sell it to the highest bidder at that point. You'd make that decision obviously based on if it's very close to the reserve price, or again, you're happy to adjust that price with what's been happening around or on the day. So if the auctioneer comes back and says the property is on the market, it essentially means that the highest bidder will be the successful purchaser for that property. However, if that doesn't happen and there's a bit of a gap between what the seller is expecting and a buyer has put in as the last bid, the property is then called to be passed in. So all that means is the last bidder has the final right to negotiate indoors or privately with the vendor, but that's the end of the auction process, and then it's subject to negotiations. and if not, it turns into a private sale, and then it's open to everyone else who was present on the day. So finally, what happens if it does get sold, right, on the day, which is when you hear the auctioneer call it once, twice, and thrice, hit the gavel with the contracts, and the property is declared sold. So first up, to really finalize the whole process, you still need to sign the contract between the buyer as well as the seller on the day. You're also required as a buyer to put down a 10% deposit in most cases. That can be negotiated in some circumstances. As well as just to be aware of, as a purchaser, your offer cannot be subject to any further conditions, as well as there's no cooling off periods when it comes to buying a property at auction. So I think that's about it. Look, those were the three main things I wanted to tick off. Hopefully that covers most of what you wanted to know or should know. Obviously there's a lot more that you'll need to understand. So speak to your agent if you want further clarification. As always, if you do pick us, I'd be happy to explain it a bit in a bit more detail and help you through that process. So thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye now.